Joining us now is former Deputy Attorney General of Maryland, Vignarajah. And I know you've been following this very closely for us. We heard from the president earlier tonight. What is your opinion of all of this?
Look, this seems like a pretty clear vindication of President Biden. You have the special counsel who was a Republican previously appointed U.S. Attorney of Maryland by President Trump being the person who's essentially cleared President Biden of any wrongdoing, saying that there's a shortage of evidence to support bringing charges. That's a pretty stark contrast with what has happened with President Trump. There's obviously some extraneous material that prosecutors typically don't include that's going to make for some political conversations. But with respect to the criminal wrongdoing, it's a pretty good day for the president.
I want to stay on that point in what you see are the key differences between this case and the one against former President Donald Trump, who was charged last year in relation to his handling of classified documents.
I think one of the hardest things for President Trump to read is to see his former appointee saying there are big differences between Biden's situation and Trump's situation. One, there's only a handful of documents, less than 20 in Biden's case, but over 300 in Trump's. Number two, the complete cooperation, to use the special counsel's terms with respect to President Biden, whereas with President Trump, you had a lot of stonewalling and obstruction of justice. It's often not the crime that gets you, but the cover-up, and that seems to be one of the big problems with President Trump. And number three, it's the details of which and how President Trump handled those documents and handled the requests for those documents, refusing to give them back, then apparently and allegedly destroying evidence and trying to cover it up. That's the difference between bringing charges and not bringing charges. And I think it's a clear win for President Biden today.
Definitely a lot of questions over what happened today, but moving forward and looking to the future, when asked if there was anything he should have done differently, Biden said not seeing what his staff was doing. So that begs the question, do you think this will all change how classified documents are dealt with going forward?
Look, this is plainly a place where there's a blind spot with respect to presidential transitions. The notion that there's not more careful review of how these documents are stored and transferred seems like a place that we could easily improve upon. The reality is that if you are the departing president, the notion that you yourself are going to oversee the packing of boxes is a little ridiculous. I appreciated the president taking responsibility for that, but really, there should be systems and processes in place to make sure that doesn't happen. It plainly won't happen again. But the fact is that in Donald Trump's case, you had a request for those documents that the former president refused. In President Biden's case, when there was an inquiry, the president fully cooperated. That in so many contexts is the difference between criminal charges and not. And that seems to have been a big factor here.
Former Deputy Attorney General of Maryland, Vignarajah, we appreciate you joining us tonight on the National Desk.
Thanks for having me.